Greetings and thanks for checking us out on the Maine Question podcast. I'm your host, Ron Lisnett. In today's episode, we will sort of close a chapter in the history of the University of Maine. If you were asked to pick someone as the face of UMaine, you'd be hard-pressed not to make a case for Robert Dana. For 40 years, he has been not only a highly visible presence, it's hard to miss his shock of white hair as he took his daily walks around the Orono campus. He's also been a shaper and a leader for this community. For most of those 4 decades, he has been the Dean of Students. And during that span, he has served that role for more than half of the students who have ever attended UMaine throughout its entire history. Being the leader of a community as dynamic and energized as a college campus is not for the faint of heart. You're dealing with young people who have a lot going on. The highs can be super high, the lows can be serious and challenging. He has been in charge of filling multiple roles, everything from celebrating the major milestone of earning a college degree to lending a shoulder to cry on to being the stern parent when needed. Through it all, he has helped create a community defined by 3 words: kindness, caring, and compassion. We'll ask Robert how he was able to do that, about the changes he has seen these past 40 years, and much more as he retires from the university. Welcome.
Good morning. Wonderful to see you. For everybody who doesn't know, it's 12 degrees below zero today.
Right. You have a little more time in your schedule for things like this.
Yeah.
We were going to bring a rocking chair in as now you're retired, but we couldn't find one in time.
I like that.
But thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. Do you remember when you first set foot on the UMaine campus? What was the plan? What was the grand vision for 17, 18-year-old Robert Dana?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was sort of a miracle that I got here, to be honest with you. I had been a little lackadaisical in my high school career. I was very social and person of the people, but wanting to go to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I'll be a pharmacist. I thought about going into the marine maritime industry. I thought about going into medicine to follow after my father. And when I got here, I was just sort of taken away by the bigness of it and all the opportunities. So it wasn't until I met my future wife that I really began to settle down. So that was a good thing.
Yeah. And you've settled down at this point, right?
No, I don't.
50 years later.
Well, I've been in a great business to keep me young and youthful, and students have kept me sort of hopefully on the cutting edge of what the culture's doing. But yeah, I feel a little bit settled down.
Right. For those that don't work in higher education, can you explain what a dean of students does? At its core, what is the job?
Yeah, a lot of people think of deans of students as people in high schools, and those are mostly the disciplinarians, the folks who keep order. We, at a university level, our job is mostly to be the primary advocate for students, to decry bureaucracy, if you will, to push back the impediments to success. We're responsible usually for most everything outside the classroom, and that does range, of course, from discipline, but where people live, how they get engaged, what support services they get, and generally to make the path to successful outcome more achievable.
Right. You've had certainly a significant hand in shaping this community. What were the sort of the guiding principles, and how close did what actually transpired get to what you were like, this is the ideal situation?
Well, it was easy to see that lots of students were coming to a place like this with every hope and aspiration that one could conceive of. They were coming here with all the expectations of their families and friends, and it immediately became clear to me that in an environment like this, you do have to clear the way. And a lot of these students come, they're very nervous, they're anxious. For people coming from Maine, many of them were going to classes bigger than their hometown. So you needed to make it a place where people felt welcome, where they felt they mattered. And my mantra became quite early on to be kind, caring, and compassionate. And that was the message we delivered to everyone in student life and hopefully everyone at the university.
Right. You never cross the finish line, right? It's always, you're always working at it.
Which is one of the things that makes me feel like a young person still, is that every year some thousands of people leave and some thousands of people come, and there are people flowing in from other institutions. So yes, the work is never done. The culture and climate's constantly changing, and you really cannot rest on your laurels.
Yeah. Now, I know this is not news to you, but people in their teens and 20s, that is a dynamic part of life, certainly. How did you deal with the extreme highs and the extreme lows that come with that age group, sort of generally?
Well, we always try to dignify students and to respect them, and to understand that coming into an environment like this with all the expectations of what could happen to somebody and for somebody, they were big. So, horrible things could happen to people, and you need to be, you couldn't be too black and white in your thinking. And we always appreciated the fact that there's something called human development, and that people are learning to accommodate an environment like this, to learning how to get along with each other, how to have relationships, who they are is changing. So I had a very broad band for behavior, and we had high expectations, and sometimes we'd say, no, that goes too far, but most times we were doing what we called deaning and trying to get people back into a reasonable comportment so that they could succeed here.
Yeah, and they have to learn how to handle success too, right?
Yeah, success is a big thing here. We don't want people to be arrogant. We don't want them to be pushy. We want them to understand that doing for others is really, really important. And one's success is measured not by just their grades, but really by their humanness. And we spend a lot of time with people doing that, and people like it. They want it. I was reminded of some people from a very fancy business school that I've met who are really not very humanistic, and others from that school are humans, and they're kind, caring, and compassionate. That makes all the difference in the world. You know, we need to be decent to people, and it can be a cold, cruel place out there. We should never add to it.
Right. In terms of crisis situations or bad news, people always look at the headlines, and you certainly experienced more than your share of difficult situations. You always were a very steady hand as you did that. Was that a learned skill? And how do you tell people how to deal with crisis situations? You've had a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, well, we did. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go awry in a place like this, where you think about the multi-thousands of students, lots of visitors. These are very appealing places for people to come who don't have a particular home here, but they want to come and do something. So you always had to be ready for what was next. Every day I thought, there was something I hadn't seen before, and that was true every day. And my disposition, I was raised in a big family. There were 7 of us kids. One sibling we had lost, so there would have been 8 of us. It was sort of chaotic there, and I was a middle child, so I learned to be a conciliator and a fixer, and to take care of a lot of things going on there. So that seemed to travel with me, but sometimes we had to step back and take a breath.
Right. You've had to be a leader in all the ways that word is defined. How did you learn to become an effective leader, and how do you teach others to lead? Because that's a big part of it too, right?
It's a big part of it, and I just went to the very basic core of, people are people. There's not one of us who, and I did come to this later in life, and I had a high impression of myself. My mother once told me, don't take yourself too seriously. And that refrain always came back to me. And the other refrain that was always there was, we were raised in a very small town in Maine, but we were Jewish, and I am Jewish. but we were raised in a relatively intolerant experience. And I remember my father who always said, well, we can teach people to understand and to have respect. And that's sort of the way I looked at it, is they had to sometimes turn the other cheek. You can put your dukes up, but fighting and boxing doesn't usually work, so I learned to be a good dancer.
I've seen that. That is definitely true. So obviously, UMaine is in the business of education, and that takes on many forms inside and outside of the classroom. How do you see sort of the balance between sort of living in a community like this and then the academic part and just learning to grow as a person and a citizen?
Well, you could come, I suppose, to a place like this or any institution like a university or college, and you could become a very, precise astrophysicist, or I guess you could learn the structures of sentences, or you could learn the technical way to be anything. But you'd still be adrift in the world. We do live amongst people. We live in a place with changing times, and we need soft skills. We need social skills. We need to be people who actually care about something bigger than ourselves. And, that was always our discussion with students. Don't get too hung up on the technicals. Get hung up on the bigger picture, because one day you'll have to, confront your end, and when you do, you want to be able to say, yeah, I did the best I could. I tried to be a decent person.
Yeah. Is it a 50-50 balance, academics and the other side that you talk about?
I guess it is a 50-50. Obviously, when you leave here, you want a pliable skill.
Right.
And most people do leave with that. But when I talk to people, and I talk to a lot of people who graduated years ago, they usually are talking about the other side of the equation. Yes, their academic bona fides are really good. They're great at that. But they talk about the things that made them human beings.
Right.
It's sort of interesting.
Right. 40 years is a long time.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you that. What's changed and what's remained the same about students or higher education in general, and any trends that surprise you or that you've sort of taken note of?
Well, certainly things have changed technologically. That the what you've heard about that flipping over every 12 or 18 months, that's really true. When I started here, we launched something called I think it was called First Class, and it was a sort of an internal communication thing. And people didn't know they were sit at their computers and could communicate with somebody across campus, but they thought that they were anonymous and they would vent their spleens and try to assert their, intellects or their disputation of authority, and got people in a lot of trouble. So you can just think from that day to today, when people are Snapchatting or Instagramming or Facebook is fading, quickly into the background. But so that's changed a lot. The things that have not changed in students is their need to matter, their need for support, their willingness to do for others. When we had COVID, which was a big disruptor, maybe a sea change disruptor, we'll see. But when we had COVID, people, and there was a political time there of isolation and separation, divide, and othering. And when COVID came on top of that, people, just sort of stepped back, and the business of just worrying about myself or, my own little environment really took hold. And it was very scary for someone like us, because you've got to be in the commons to make a difference. So if people were stepping back, it was, threatening sort of the basis of what I thought of as higher education. So it turns out that, families and everybody who comprised the family, they were nervous, they were worried.
Right.
And so they were self-protective. But it caused a lot of ripples in the society that were very unpleasant pleasant. And I think we're coming back from that now, and people want to be part of the solution. They're caring for each other. They're open to each other. Isolationism, well, we still hear about it, and there's still pushes, the big picture. I don't see it here. I think students are really reaching out, extending lifelines, and picking up each other and having each other's back every day.
Right. Those three words, kindness, caring, and compassion, how did you land on those, other than they sort of begin with the same sound? I mean, is that something that right from the get-go you came up with, or did it evolve over time? Or
Well, I read something yesterday. You're never supposed to use alliteration in any writing or speaking. So you're right. I guess
you broke that rule.
I guess kindness, caring, and compassion, they sort of alliterate, or whatever the word would be. But I saw enough where people were, I think, self-absorbed. And I used to hear people say to me a lot of times, we don't want to set a precedent, or that behavior is wrong. There's a lot of black and whiting of people, and people are saying, I don't want to be tied up into this chaos, so I've got to structure the world so that it doesn't, something like that doesn't happen. And I used to find myself saying a lot to people, well, how would you like to be treated? Or if this was your child, how would you want to treat them? I mean, these people are coming, everybody thinks they're going to succeed here. And this is a place where, you can succeed. So if we all of a sudden become intolerant and just want to take care of our own needs, we're not being very decent to people. So it was the golden rule.
Right.
And I sort of go back to my childhood about that. No matter how badly we saw people being treated or we were treated, my parents always said, well, just treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. Right. So it was sort of burned into my thinking, and I guess the kind, caring, compassion, I remember saying it many times, well, we've got to be compassionate here. Just think, you've got to call a parent and say, your child is not succeeding here, we're sending them home, or your child did X, and we're not going to tolerate it. It's not, neither of those are compassionate or caring, and just be decent to people.
Right. What are you going to miss? And what are you going to be glad that you don't have to pick up the phone or do anymore?
Well, I miss the students. I just tell you, the richness of my experience here it's almost incalculably huge. And just to go around campuses to see students and to want to engage with students, high-fiving them, smiling with them, taking pictures with them, supporting them, being at their events, and showing them that, we're all in it together. I miss that terribly, right. And already. And what I don't really miss is the 24-hour day, 7 days a week, 365 a day. And I've only had a couple of days of that, but I haven't been woken up out of bed just recently. And I sort of knew we were getting towards retirement time, because for many, many, many years, I was just sort of always like semi-awake. So when the phone would ring, we'd just start chatting with whoever it was in the middle of the night. But now, as I moved towards retirement, I realized I get a little anxious when the phone rang, and I realized, you can't really be anxious because you can't think clearly. So I don't miss that.
Right. You were notable or famous, perhaps, for your daily walks on campus, and I know you, with your shock of white hair, you can't hide from people very, very well. But was that and interacting with people when you were doing that, was that sort of the best part of your day in some ways?
Yeah, I love that, and I did. I went every day on campus quite a lot, and would walk 4 or 5 miles every day around the campus at different times. And it was to see the campus. I used to bother my friends in facilities management because I would be taking pictures and calling them, and they'd always come and fix things. But mostly it was to see students, to have them try to get me up on a Slack line, or to tell me something they were working on, or would wander up where students live just to see how they were faring. And to me, it was just like oil being poured into my tank. So I'd go back, and I always told our staff, get out of these buildings.
Right.
Go out and see these students, because if you're having a difficult day, if life is overwhelming, just go out. I mean, you'll have a lot of sunshine poured into you.
Right. Now we're going to test your editing skills on the fly here, but some stories. Any stories to share? People, situations, challenges to overcome, funny, weird stuff. I know this is probably several racing through your head right now, but what could you share with us? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, well, I do have sort of a funny thing. It caused a whole new business here. We had won the hockey championship in 1993, and that was one of those nights I got a call. I think it was about 2 a.m, and they said, well, there was quite a lot of hullabaloo occurring out in the mall, maybe sort of a semi-riot and a huge fire, and what were we going to do about it? I said, well, I'll come up. So I came up, and there was maybe 500 students and a big fire. And they had just driven somebody had just driven a snowmobile onto the fire. So, if you haven't seen me in person, my stature is, I'm 5'6". So I waded into...
It's being generous, but yes.
Being generous on a good day. I waded into the crowd, and I thought, I don't, what am I doing? I'm going to get up there and tell them to disperse. So I waded in, and a football player picked me up, just wrapped his arms around me and picked me up, and I thought, oh, I'm getting thrown into this fire. But he picked me up, and it was like a trophy. Dean Dana, Dean Dana. And then they all left. So the fire got put out. It was good. I remember that night. We had lots of things like that, whether it was bump stock or senior celebration or Maine Day. We had all sorts of times where people were really happy, and those were the fun times.
Right. Now, as we've alluded to, you've been at this a long time. Where do you see all this headed? Higher education? Any idea what the next 40 years, or maybe a smaller chunk of time, looks like? Where do you see this all going?
Well, the University of Maine's been around for 160 years, and
you've been here for 25% of that time. That always blows my mind.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. But higher education in its current iteration has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and there's a desire for this and a need for it, because you need people to be highly trained in that business of the other side, well-rounded students. That's really true. So I know there's a big push to online education, or places where people never have to step foot on a campus. That'll serve a purpose for people, but in terms of improving the society and keeping people engaged with each other and knowing that they have responsibility, it requires a place like this. So I think, states will realize that public higher education is really important to their health, and they'll continue to support it. I hope the support won't go down. I hope it'll go up, because the cost of college is a lot, right. And for people all over the globe, it's a lot. So it has to be an accessible opportunity, and it can't be viewed as a luxury. It's something we all need.
Yeah. And you can't replace being part of and helping as a young person to learn how to shape a community, be part of a community, just be part of society like that.
Yeah, you've got to be in it, and you've got to learn about relationships and communication, and you've got to learn about selflessness, and you've got to learn about supporting the other. And just sitting behind a computer, you don't get that. Right. We shouldn't become univariate in our thinking. We've got to be big thinkers.
Right. Well, it's so great I know you're only a couple of days into your retirement, but we appreciate you coming back so quickly and sharing time with us. What's next? What plans do you have, if any, formed right now?
Well, my wife and I are in negotiations on how to accommodate each other because, of course, I've been here basically morning, noon, and night for a long, long time. Our children are all grown, and Cookie, my wife, has been retired for 2 years, so we're learning to accommodate each other. I'm, repelling her hobbies and trying to acquire my own.
Is there a honey-do list in there?
There's a big, long honey-do list. Fix that, fix this, and I have no real malleable or saleable skills in that respect, so I've been looking on YouTube, but I'm sure I can cost myself a lot of money, a lot of problems. So we'll do that. We're going to go do some traveling.
Nice.
We'll take care of our grandkids. And one cool thing I did, which I will see if it comes to fruition, I had seen on the internet something about being a notary public. I said, I think I could do that. So I had to take a test.
The next career, right, yeah.
I'm waiting to hear from the state. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll put up a sign, Notary Public.
Well, thanks so much. You're going to be missed.
Thank you so much. It's delightful, and I love you, Maine.
Thanks as always for hanging out with us. You can find all of our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, UMaine's YouTube page, as well as Amazon Music. Questions or comments, send them along to Maine Question at maine.edu. This is Ron Lisnett. We'll catch you next time on the Maine Question.